Welcome, adventurers.
Candy or diamonds?
This is way more important than that.
Yeah.
This is not ever going to be on TV.
My mic.
Let us pass.
These are my friends now.
What is happening?
I've always known about Dungeons & Dragons. When I was a kid, I was very curious about it. But when I was finally exposed to it, I was just asking around. I just really wanted to play.
When I was a child and it was kind of like more of a, as everybody knows, it was much more underground. It was like a movement.
I used to force my friends to play with me at birthday parties, and that was the only way I would get to play. But I would have to DM for them and explain the game.
Growing up, I always wanted to play D&D, but I didn't really have enough friends to play, or nobody asked me to. And then when we were shooting True Blood, Deborah mentioned that she played it.
Deborah 100% introduced me to RPGs.
And a friend of mine bought me the starter kit for edition 4, which I kind of rifled through but didn't have anyone to play with. But then my manager at the time had been playing Dungeons & Dragons his entire life. So I asked Alan if he would run a game for me and my friends, and we're still running that same group.
I think I flat out asked her, like, if you ever wanted me to play with you, maybe you could invite me to play Dungeons & Dragons with you. And she finally did one day, and so we've been playing ever since.
It is a game of imagination, of mental dexterity, of collaboration and teamwork, and that you cannot be afraid to fail.
It's like watching your make-believe come to real life.
I'm a huge fan of games in general. I play loads of games, but never have I played a game where you feel like you're in the game.
So far from this experience, I've been surprised by how free and open it is. Like with video games, of course, you have to follow a path, but like with this, whatever you say, you can do. But of course, you have to like roll for it.
If you're an RPG person and you've never played D&D, you're missing out. Kevin Smith can tell you that now. Sam Richardson can tell you that now. If you're a gamer and you haven't, because this is sort of like, D&D is sort of like the most pure version of what that is.
I was so excited about rolling a natural 20 after I was told that it was a good thing. The whole room lit up, and I didn't know what I did. It was like I was a child again, and I made a boom boom. Everybody was so proud of me. It was great.
I didn't really understand that it was a role-playing game. I didn't really understand that there's like, you have a character and occasionally you like speak as that character. And I was kind of really horrified by that. But I actually found it, I got into it, I found it really enjoyable and very silly, and that's great.
What brings me joy when I play this game, it's the collaboration with other players. And it's watching them solve problems in ways that I could never have guessed. I love saying, all right, here's a 30-foot wall, and there's no way around it. What are you gonna do? And everyone solves that problem differently.
And watch as a bunch of different imaginations unfold together and see what actual pure, undivided freedom is. Because that's how I feel when I play.
You're on a journey, and it's a collective story shared amongst everyone at the table, and that these intersections of great things happen and are determined by the roll of a dice. So it's a story that has a direction and a sort of beginning, middle, and end, but you don't know where those things are going to happen or what's going to happen in the storytelling.
So if video games and all of these other kind of stories exist now and they're super immersive and amazing, they all came from this original idea back in 1973 or 74 or whenever it was. And yeah, I think once you go back and you taste the pure stuff, it'll give a whole new flavor to the other games, and you'll try to find that same sense of play and freedom that you had in D&D and kind of apply it to the rest of it.
I think RPGs have come a long way. When I first got started, getting into this sort of world, things like shows like this one didn't really exist, especially not on this scale.
And now the fact that it is becoming extremely mainstream, widespread, the geeks rule the world kind of thing makes me very happy.
I grew up in the 90s, and it was sort of at the end of this like satanic panic that surrounded not just Dungeons and Dragons, but I guess RPGs in general. Something was weird about kids getting together in a basement and discussing magic that kind of scared the culture as a whole. And it's been cool to see this transition and acceptance, both I think in large part to Geek and Sundry and Nerdist and Alpha and all of these programs. We're at the forefront of making it accessible to people.
It is the era of the geek. The geek have inherited the earth, which is a thing that we say often. To be of the generation that grew up with these nerdy things and then have been able to be the adults that get to be at full wingspan within them to not only create content, but just to have content that involves the things that we love is really special.
I would say Relics and Rarities came to me pretty early on. The first sort of impulse I had about this game was that I wanted to hit them with heavy stuff that they couldn't handle, but give them creative options about how to solve it.
The world Deborah created was incredibly detailed and impressed. I'm still kind of blown away by the idea that we, as players, kind of suggest ideas and we're limited only by our imagination.
So 16, he hits.
Oh, get it.
So now let's...
Our imagination is so enhanced with everything that she's created from her brain. I mean, look around this room. It's completely accurate. Every single thing, which makes us play even bigger and even stronger.
I've long loved this idea of trinkets, that they're not powerful, they're not particularly flashy, but if you use them in the right way, they can have tremendous results.
As a fellow GM, it's something I really admire about her. It's like she really sat and mulled over the world and the settings and the characters so that every question we as players ask, she has a great answer to.
You two back to back in the middle of the station. That's right, okay.
The great thing about working with Deborah and this adventure is that she's already into props. She's giving the players all these things that are telling story and tactile.
I like the idea of creative magic items. So rather than just getting powerful +1 swords or amulets or things like that, I like the idea of creative magic items. So I do this a lot in my home games where the loot that they get will be a spool of thread. And they're like, well, what do I do with this? And it turns out it has a little bit of a magic property and you can do incredible things with that when you're creative.
The most unique and special experience so far with Relics and Rarities is the expansive and immersive set we've been placed in. It's absolutely fantastic to see the world completely come alive around you in an RPG sense. I don't think it's been done before to my knowledge in this way. I don't think it can be topped.
I just didn't think the set was going to be this beautiful. All of these things fell out of Deborah's brain.
I mean, the set that we played on, played the actual game in was just, it blew my mind. And at one point there was lightning and then there was actual lightning. There was a lighting effect, which it was just incredible, and it kind of helps you feel so immersed in the environment and the enjoyment of it all.
I think it's really awesome, when you step into this room, the antechamber, before you get into the room we're actually playing the game, and the world that Deborah created, she put more work into this game than I put into every movie I ever made. More thought process went into this. She's got answers for all the questions and stuff. And I just remember sitting on set and people would be like, why are Jay and Silent Bob striking back? And I'm like, I don't know, never thought about that. Where were you when I wrote the script?
So I had this idea that I wanted to fill a space with mundane items that actually had magical properties to them. And I thought, okay, well, that's an antique store, that's a curio shop, that's these funny little things. So I started thinking what would be the best name for something that has no magic, that is mundane and boring. And I was like, relics and rare. I like the idea that you walk in here and you're like, nothing here is a relic and nothing here is particularly rare. So yeah, so when I sent the sort of images and my descriptions, I was like, I think it should look like your grandmother's attic. A bunch of crappy stuff that you think is really old and annoying, but then she goes to Antiques Roadshow and gets $4,000 for it because it was actually really precious all along. I really wanted to do very distinct environments. I wanted them to explore 6 completely different worlds, which meant that sometimes your strengths are going to shine, sometimes an ally's strengths are going to shine, and it allowed everyone to kind of show up and be the leader at different points in that game.
There's a great
It has times where it's really dark and creepy, and we switch between those rapidly as we go along on our adventures. We'll be in a cute little curio shop 1 minute, and the next minute we're in a haunted mansion, like Exorcist style. It's fantastic.
Shh. Be quiet, or the bad man will come.
The fact that at any turn there's danger and unexpected characters that you don't know whether to trust or not is exciting, and I think that it is just a testament to Deborah's genius.
amazing thing with his feet the cats do that's like this, like.
My preparation over the years of DMing has changed a lot. I mean, specifically for this show, for Relics and Rarities, it was very, very different because what we were trying to accomplish was, 1, something that was more of a show, and 2, because of the change out of guest characters, I really wanted to make that feel integral to the structure. So I came up with this idea of like Horcruxes in Harry Potter, right? So you can't defeat Voldemort until you destroy all the Horcruxes. So you have these mini quests that lead to the ultimate quest. So that was sort of the structural idea of Relics and Rarities, was that we would have 5 one-off adventures that would be integral to defeating the baddies in the end. So that was items, that's information, it's Zelda. It's a map and a compass and a sword, and you do what you gotta do. You find the things you gotta find in order to defeat the baddie. So this was the structure of this was very tight. So this required a tremendous amount of pre-planning. Everything. I wanted to plant clues for the final episode and the first episode, and how do I kind of make this feel like an overarching story, despite the fact that we're going to kind of wrap everything up each time.
I think the world that Deborah's created has been pretty amazing. She's so detailed and like so imaginative. It's like really fun just seeing everything that like she comes up with.
I knew I wanted to do impossible stories. I think it's so fun when you're a squishy little 5th level character and you're fighting a frickin' Death Knight. And it's just clear you're gonna die unless you're smarter than it. I find that if battles are too evenly matched, you just get, you hit and then they hit, and you're just kind of knocking off HP and kind of doing that. But the great thing is when you're never gonna survive a just straight on battle with something, you have to come up with some other way. I knew I wanted to do something that was intense and tough. And so I sort of pitched this thing. I was like, what if they fought 2 to 3 bad guys? You guys were on board and excited for that. And then we talked about the element of having an overarching story, but also wanting each episode to be able to stand alone. I wanted to make sure that the change out of the guest characters made sense, and that we weren't just like, oh, and then they disappear and now you have someone new, that we really understood why new people were joining the group every time. And so it was almost a fun problem-solving exercise, I think, from our end as the creatives, the creators of this from the beginning, is how do we sort of take these challenges and make them feel authentic.
I think the great thing about playing something like Dungeons and Dragons, it supports and embellishes your imagination, your storytelling, your interactive ability to hang out with people and problem solve.
But there's something to that. There's more depth. That it isn't just about vanquishing the bad guys and saving the innocent townsfolk. I mean, that's in there. But there's something more to it. It's really discovering parts of yourself and committing to character in a way that I think is even stronger than what you experience when you read it from an outside perspective.
RPGs, I could say, are the core of why I want to perform. From day one, taking acting classes or going on stage or being on film, all that I'm doing are playing these characters that I've developed, going on adventures, playing with my friends, and it's always interesting to see these aspects come out in the characters that I play.
I do think it is a way to get to know yourself better. So much of our life is about taking the path of least resistance. You come up upon an obstacle and you go, all right, well, we'll do something else, or that's too hard. The whole point of D&D, especially as a dungeon master, my job is to throw challenges and obstacles at you, and your job is to figure out how to get through them. And I think you learn about yourself and the way that you think and your leanings. But I do think that I learn about myself and my own conflict resolution and how I deal with challenges and my own awareness of myself by playing D&D. Here's what I hope is different about Relics and Rarities. I think, again, similarly, this game can sometimes feel like a combat game, you know, and it gets into that world of that can sometimes feel kind of a little masculine in a more traditional sense. And I liked the idea that with this game, it was going to be lots of very fun, violent combat, but also it would take place in a curio shop and rather than a tavern. And that my baddies are women, you know, that we could kind of bring that element to it and say, like, look, this is just as engaging and creative. And the cool thing about Dungeons and Dragons is it is that open. Just because traditionally maybe it's been more dominated by men doesn't mean that it doesn't have absolutely the capacity to take on any story that you want to offer. I like as well that in that same vein, I can go from a haunted house to the woods, to a submarine, to an Egyptian Kektesh tomb. It's so open and available in that way. So yeah, when I think about the fact that fans are gonna go with us on this journey here, I'm excited, but I'm also nervous. I want them to like it, and I want it to open people's perspectives a little bit about D&D, especially for newer players. Because I think a lot of times when I meet people, they say, well, I don't even understand what this is, or am I smart enough, or is it too complicated? And I really tried to make it about the mystery and the story and the quests, rather than rules and stats, which all those things are really fun if that's the way that you want to play, but I think that can sometimes prevent people from getting started. So I'm hoping that the fans that watch this show, I hope that some of them will be new to the game and will go, I just kind of want to see what this is. I want to see Simone Missick play a bounty hunter. I want to see Charlie Cox play a pirate, you know? I want to see Matthew Lillard play a medium or Kevin Smith as a private detective, you know? I wanted to give them fun backgrounds so that you could see that, that's what matters. You can play the character and the fun and the story, and then when you have to make a roll, it's okay if we take 3 minutes and figure out where it is on your sheet. I would hope the intimidation factor goes down.